What if survival meant building a life from mud, river, and spirit? In the heart of Papua New Guinea, the air is thick with the drone of insects and the sweet, heavy scent of rotting mangrove. Canoes cut across black water that hides more than it reveals, crocodiles, ancestral spirits, and secrets carried by the current. Here, entire villages rise on stilts above swamps, where the line between land and water blurs with every tide. For centuries, tribes have carved out an existence in this labyrinth, guided by ritual, myth, and the rhythm of a river that never stops moving. But in a world so remote, so fragile, the question is not just how they endure, but for how long. High in the fertile heart of Papua's Baliem Valley, where mountains fold like ancient walls and rivers weave silver paths through green plains, live the Dani, a people whose story has flowed through these highlands for countless generations. Their land is a cradle of mist and stone, a sanctuary carved by time, where the soil is rich and the air carries the scent of firewood and earth. Here, the Dani rooted themselves, shaping a culture as enduring as the peaks that shelter them. Yet life in the valley was never free from struggle. Surrounded by rival clans, the Dani built their history on both cultivation and conflict. The sweet potato became their lifeblood, grown in terraced gardens that fed the community and bound them to the land. But alongside these fields rose the rhythm of warfare, for the valley was divided, each group protecting its ground, its honor, and its ancestors. Spears clashed, drums echoed, and the cycle of strife etched itself deep into Dani memory. The conflict was not only with rivals, but with the weight of survival itself. To live in the highlands meant endurance, enduring the cold nights, the sudden storms, and the constant demand to defend what was theirs. In their rituals of mourning and their ceremonies of life, the Dani carried the echoes of ancestors, binding each generation to the next with fierce devotion. The climax of their story lies in this balance between creation and defense, between tending gardens and wielding spears. Through it all, the Dani emerged as a people defined not by loss, but by resilience, their culture surviving every test. Today, the valley still speaks their name, its fields and ridges shaped by hands that never yielded. In the vast highlands of Papua, the Dani stand as guardians of a heritage born from soil, struggle, and unbroken spirit. Across the shimmering waters of the Sepik River basin lies the realm of the Chambri, a people whose lives have always been bound to the rhythm of lakes and swamps. Their world is a mosaic of winding waterways, glistening under the sun, where the horizon is painted not with mountains, but with endless reflections of sky upon water. In this shifting landscape, the Chambri shaped a history of resilience, their culture rising from the currents like reeds upon the shore. The waterways gave life, yet demanded mastery. To survive, the Chambri learned to bend with the floods and to draw strength from the lake that cradled them. Fish became the heart of their sustenance. Nets and spears, the tools that tied them to the water's bounty. Yet the true depth of their culture lay in trade. The Chambri forged a powerful role as the traders of the Sepik, navigating rivers to exchange goods and weaving networks of alliance that reached far beyond their shores. Conflict came not only in rivalry, but in the fragile balance of dependence. In a world where resources shifted with the seasons, survival required more than strength. It demanded diplomacy and adaptability. Through ritual and ceremony, the Chambri bound themselves to the spirits of the water, ensuring that every journey, every exchange, carried both practical and sacred meaning. Their lake was not only a source of food, but the heart of their identity, a mirror reflecting both their fears and their hopes. The climax of their story rests in this mastery of adaptation. The Chambri endured by turning water into wealth, isolation into connection, and fragility into power. Their homeland remains a living testament to the bond between people and lake, where canoes glide as silently as time, and the surface of the water still carries the echoes of centuries. In the Sepik Basin, the Chambri endure, a people shaped by water and sustained by its endless flow. In the lush rainforests of Papua New Guinea's East Sepik region, where towering trees weave a canopy of green and the earth breathes with the rhythm of rivers, live the Abelam. Their homeland lies between the mountains and the lowlands, a place where fertile soil nourishes both gardens and traditions. Here, surrounded by dense jungle, the Abelam built a culture that reaches skyward, as bold and intricate as the art for which they are renowned. The foundation of their story rests in the land. Yams, grown with ritual care, became more than food. They were symbols of power, wealth, and continuity. Each harvest was tied to ceremony, where competition over size and abundance reflected both prestige and devotion. Through these gardens, the Abelam honored their ancestors and ensured that the cycle of life remained unbroken. Yet the jungle also held challenges, with rival groups and shifting alliances demanding vigilance and strength. Conflict was carried not only in defense of territory, but in the spiritual weight of belief. The Abelam saw their world as layered with unseen forces, where every act of cultivation or ceremony carried consequences. To maintain harmony, they built grand ceremonial houses, adorned with carvings and paintings that reached upward like guardians of the village. These structures were not just shelters, but sacred spaces where the community confronted both human rivalry and the mysteries of the spirit world. The climax of their story is revealed in the way art, ritual, and survival merged into one. The Abelam turned their environment into a canvas, their gardens into sacred ground, and their villages into living shrines of culture. To walk among their towering houses is to feel the weight of centuries, where every painted figure and every yam harvest speaks of resilience and reverence. In the depths of the Sepik forests, the Abelam remain, their heritage rising from the earth like a song carved in wood and spirit. In the cloud-draped foothills of Papua New Guinea's southern highlands, where waterfalls pour like silver threads into valleys of endless green, live the Kaluli. Their homeland is a rainforest alive with sound, where birds cry from the treetops and rivers sing through the shadows. To the Kaluli, this forest has never been just a backdrop. It is a living presence, shaping their history and echoing in their beliefs. The setup of their story begins with the land itself. The rainforest offered both nourishment and challenge, demanding deep knowledge of its rhythms. Hunting, gathering, and cultivating gardens bound the Kaluli to their environment. But beyond survival lay a spiritual vision. They listened to the songs of birds not as distant calls, but as voices of the departed, ancestors speaking through the canopy, guiding and reminding the living of their ties to the unseen. Conflict emerged in the struggle to endure within such a vast and demanding world. The rainforest, though abundant, concealed dangers at every turn. Rivalries between groups added further strain, where boundaries of land and honor demanded defense. Yet the deepest tension lay in the fragile balance between the human and the spirit world. The Kaluli believed misfortune arose when harmony was broken, and so every hunt, every harvest carried the weight of responsibility to both earth and sky. The climax of their story is found in their rituals and their songs, where grief and resilience became one. Through ceremonies of lament, the Kaluli gave voice to sorrow, transforming loss into music that carried through the forest like birdsong. In these moments, the boundaries of life and death blurred, uniting the people with their ancestors and with the living earth around them. To witness the Kaluli is to see a culture woven into the rainforest itself. Their world is one of sound and spirit, where every waterfall, every bird, and every tree becomes part of an unending chorus of survival and memory. In the southern Highlands, the Kaluli endure, their story sung eternally beneath the forest canopy. High in the rugged highlands of Papua New Guinea, where jagged peaks scrape the clouds and valleys roll out like green oceans of mist, live the Enga. Their homeland is a land of contrasts, fertile soils that promise abundance, yet a climate and terrain that test endurance. In this dramatic landscape, the Enga shaped a story of strength and survival, binding their identity to the mountains that both shelter and challenge them. The foundation of their life lay in the earth itself. Sweet potatoes became their lifeblood. Cultivated on terraces, carved from the hillsides, each garden a testament to patience and persistence. But with abundance came rivalry, for fertile land was treasure, and the Enga stood fiercely to protect it. For generations, their history was written in cycles of alliance and conflict, where clans defended their honor, their territory, and their ancestors' memory with unyielding determination. The conflict ran deeper than boundaries of soil. Warfare was entwined with ritual, a struggle not only for land, but for prestige, balance, and the affirmation of identity. Every clash carried echoes of the past, for the Enga saw themselves as part of a continuum where ancestors watch closely, and each victory or loss was measured against a legacy that reached back through time. The climax of their story rises in the resilience of their culture. Through war and peace, planting and harvest, the Enga held fast to traditions that bound community together. Ceremonies marked life's passages, while exchanges of wealth and ritual offerings wove bonds that outlasted conflict. What emerged was a people defined not by hardship alone, but by the strength to endure it, to transform challenge into heritage. In the highland mists, the Enga remain as guardians of their mountains. Their story lives in the soil, the songs, and the unbroken spirit of a people who carved meaning from struggle and drew resilience from the land itself. Along the vast floodplains and winding rivers of western Papua New Guinea lies the homeland of the Gogodala, a people whose life has always been carried upon the water. Their land is a tapestry of swamps and lagoons, where canoes glide like shadows and the horizon dissolves into endless reflections. In this shifting world of river and reed, the Gogodala built a culture that floats as gracefully as their vessels, shaped by both the abundance and the uncertainty of the wetlands. The setup of their story begins with the canoe, carved from towering trees and painted with intricate designs. These vessels were not mere tools, but living symbols of connection, carrying families, goods, and stories across the floodplains. The rivers offered fish and sago, yet survival demanded more than harvest. It required mastery of the waterways and alliances with distant groups, for the Gogodala became traders, their paddles cutting paths that bound one community to another. Conflict lay in the very nature of their environment. The swamps shifted with the rains, flooding homes and gardens, demanding constant adaptation. Rival groups, too, contested resources and routes, where control of the river meant both sustenance and power. To endure, the Gogodala turned to ceremony, carving not only wood, but identity. Their art and rituals gave meaning to struggle, transforming the river from a threat into a sacred companion. The climax of their story emerges in their great canoe rituals, where painted prows rose like guardians and chants echoed across the water. These moments were both celebration and defiance, proof that the Gogodala had mastered the floods and woven strength from uncertainty. Each canoe became a floating testament to resilience, a bridge between people, spirits, and the endless horizon. To witness the Gogodala is to see a culture inseparable from water. Their rivers still whisper with the memory of journeys, and their canoes still carry the spirit of ancestors. In the wetlands of Papua New Guinea, the Gogodala endure, their story drifting timelessly upon the current. High in the central highlands of Papua New Guinea, where sharp ridges cut into the clouds and valleys descend like deep green chasms, live the Simbu. Their land is a place of dramatic contrasts, where the soil is rich, yet the slopes are steep, and every step demands strength. In this rugged country, the Simbu carved a life defined by resilience, their history woven into the mountains that both protect and confine them. The setup of their story begins with the earth itself. Sweet potatoes, their staple, anchored survival, grown in gardens that clung to the hillsides. Each harvest tied families to the land, yet every plot of soil was precious, sparking rivalries between clans. In these valleys, survival was never solitary. The Simbu relied on both community and vigilance, for neighbors could be allies in peace or enemies in war. Conflict became the rhythm of life. Warfare was fierce, driven not only by disputes over land, but by questions of honor, balance, and ancestral duty. Spears and shields clashed across valleys, and victory was measured in prestige as much as territory. Yet these battles were not aimless. They carried the weight of tradition, of stories passed down, of spirits that demanded justice and remembrance. The mountains echoed with both the sound of struggle and the chants of ritual, binding conflict to culture. The climax of their story rests in the endurance of identity. Through hardship, the Simbu held fast to customs that gave meaning to their challenges. Ceremonies honored ancestors, exchanges bound clans together, and resilience turned conflict into continuity. To see the Simbu is to see a people who transformed one of the most demanding landscapes into a homeland, rich with spirit and memory. In the central highlands, where the air is thin and the land rises like a fortress, the Simbu remain. Their story endures in the soil, the mountains, and the unyielding strength of a people who built life upon the edge of the clouds. Along the southern shores of Papua New Guinea, where the coral sea shimmers against the coastline and trade winds sweep across sandy inlets, live the Motu. Their homeland lies in a world of tides and reefs, where the ocean provides both pathway and challenge, and where every horizon carries the promise of journeys. In this meeting place of land and sea, the Motu shaped a story of navigation, resilience, and connection. The setup of their life began with canoes, hewn from great logs and bound with skill, passed down through generations. The Motu became masters of the waves, their sails catching the winds that carried them east and west. They are remembered most for the great trading expeditions known as the Hiri voyages, where fleets of Lakatoi canoes crossed vast waters, linking distant villages in a network of exchange. Pots and goods from their homeland became treasures, traded for food and materials their own shores could not provide. Conflict lay in the dangers of these voyages. The sea was never gentle, and storms could rise without warning, tearing sails and scattering fleets across the waves. Beyond the ocean's fury, rivalries between groups added further risk, for each journey carried the weight of both survival and prestige. To endure, the Motu infused their voyages with ritual and song, seeking favor from the spirits of sea and wind. Each departure was more than commerce. It was a test of courage, a declaration of identity against the uncertainty of the deep. The climax of their story shines in the enduring legacy of the Hiri. The great Lakatoi, with their crab-claw sails, became more than vessels. They were symbols of ingenuity and unity, floating bridges that tied communities together across hundreds of miles of ocean. These journeys transformed risk into tradition, hardship into heritage. To glimpse the Motu is to see a people whose lives are inseparable from the tides. Their shores still hold the memory of sails upon the horizon, and their culture still carries the rhythm of waves and wind. Along the southern coast, the Motu remain, children of both land and sea. Far from the coasts and rivers, deep in the untamed rainforests of Papua New Guinea, live the Korowai, a people whose homes rise high above the ground, in towering trees. Here the jungle spreads like an endless sea of green, alive with the calls of unseen creatures and the murmur of hidden streams. In this dense and shadowed world, the Korowai carved their story skyward, building shelters that touch the canopy and stand as symbols of safety and defiance. For generations, their greatest challenge was the forest itself. The land was fertile, yet unforgiving, filled with spirits, dangers, and rival groups hidden within the thickets. To survive, the Korowai lifted their dwellings into the air, balancing on massive stilts of wood that soared above the jungle floor. High among the branches, they found protection from floods, predators, and enemies alike. These tree houses were more than homes. They were fortresses of ingenuity, a response to the conflict between humanity and wilderness. The struggle was not only with nature, but with the unseen forces woven into their beliefs. Legends told of spirits lurking in the dark, testing the courage of those who walked beneath the canopy. Each treehouse became a sanctuary, a place where families gathered above the shadows, closer to the sky than the earth. Their very way of life was a declaration that survival meant rising above fear, shaping wood and rope into a culture suspended between heaven and forest. The climax of their story is not in conquest, but in endurance. The Korowai remain a living testament to human adaptation, their homes still perched among the treetops like watchful sentinels. To glimpse their towering shelters is to see resilience carved into the rainforest itself, a reminder that in one of the most remote corners of the world, humanity has always found a way to rise. High in the remote valleys of Papua New Guinea's Star Mountains, where mist clings to jagged peaks and rivers carve secret paths through dense forest, dwell the Mek. Their homeland is a world of isolation, a rugged wilderness where the air is cold, the earth is steep, and every step demands strength. In this hidden corner of the Highlands, the Mek shaped a life bound tightly to land and lineage, their story carried in the soil and the silence of the mountains. The setup of their existence begins with the challenge of the terrain. Steep slopes and thin soils limited what could be grown. Yet the Mek carved gardens into the land, planting staples that kept their communities alive. Their lives were measured by the rhythm of cultivation, harvest, and survival, each act of labor binding them to their ancestors who had done the same before. Conflict rose from the scarcity of the land. Valleys were small, gardens fragile, and resources limited. To protect what was theirs, the Mek defended their territory fiercely, clan against clan, each struggle carrying the weight of survival and honor. Warfare became part of their history, spears and shields clashing in mist-filled clearings where the outcome decided not only safety but the future of families and generations. The land itself seemed to test their endurance, forcing resilience in every breath and choice.